Guys, it's Shawn. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to talk about board of directors meetings, specifically meeting minutes. So if you're a business owner, business leader, you own a business, you probably are going to be having board meetings at some point. You certainly are probably going to have a board and be required to have meetings if you have a corporation. And if you have an LLC set up a particular way, you may have a board as well. A lot of the LLCs I set up go and use a board structure even though they're an LLC, because the board structure really is, in my opinion, a very good way to manage business. It's an efficient way to structure your decision making, to have kind of that leadership intermediary between the owners and the management team. So, but the question becomes, how do you memorialize a meeting of the board? And we're going to jump into that today. We're going to teach you kind of the basics of minutes of board meetings and what you may or may not want to include, and how to kind of work through the process of pulling it. We'll actually be looking at somebody else's form of board minutes as well, so it'll give you some ideas of what you might want to put into your meeting minutes. So if you're managing a business, if you have somebody managing a business for you, this is going to be very valuable. You can share this video with your management team to actually write the minutes, but you'll also have a good understanding of what's supposed to be in there and what's not, which can be so valuable because a lot of members of boards and business owners get confused about that. We will be talking about legal issues. Of course, legal issues vary by state, varies by locality in some cases. So this is not legal advice. It's not tailored to you, not tailored to your situation. It's just for educational entertainment purposes. Also not financial or investment advice. The key to board minutes is to memorialize what happens, right? So if you look at the corporate statute, wherever you are, it's likely going to talk about situations where you have board meetings, and certain things are supposed to happen in board meetings. The big thing that's supposed to happen in board meetings is votes on certain issues. Do we do the merger? Do we not do the merger? Do we authorize this transaction? Do we not authorize this transaction, right? And we want to use these board minutes as a chance to memorialize what happened in that meeting. And so we want to think about creating a paper record. We got to do the meeting. We got to have the actions, because our corporate law is probably required to do that, or if we've set up an LLC with a board structure, the LLC agreement is telling us to do it. So we got to have the meeting. But we also want to memorialize the meeting so that everybody knows what's happening, so that we know we have the proper authorizations and votes, and then also so we have the records in case it's ever questioned. Did you do this? Did you authorize this transaction? Yes. This can protect the board from fiduciary duty issues. It can be the corporate record that things were authorized, so that there's no questions later for tax purposes, for title purposes, other reasons. So we want to memorialize what happened at the deal. Do you draft them in advance? This is in fact a strategy that I will often use with my clients. Is if I know a board meeting is coming up, I will start working on the board minutes in advance of the meeting. I will lay them out. Now, they're a draft. That may not be what happens at the meeting. Some people do an agenda, which is fine too. But I find if we draft the minutes the way that we think they might come out, or whatever, we then have a lot more structure to the meeting, and it almost becomes a checklist for the meeting. Now, of course, it is a draft. If you do the draft in advance strategy, those are not your meeting minutes. Those are just an idea of what might happen at the meeting. What happens at the meeting, is up to the meeting, and those minutes will need to be adjusted. It's very rare that you have draft minutes and then the meeting goes exactly the way planned. So think about drafting your minutes in advance so that you have something ready to work off of, and so you know what needs to be covered, and it also can go into some of the issues that we're going to be looking at. Now, there are many forms for drafting board minutes. Here in just a minute, we're going to look at one set that I found on the internet. Again, you always don't know what you're going to get on the internet. Now, I know enough about boards to tell you these are okay minutes. I don't know whether they comply with particular state laws because I haven't done that level of analysis, but they generally get the idea across of what board minutes are. But there is no one set form. They will look different for different companies, different formats, different styles. I've seen lots of different things over the years. I certainly have a format and style I use. I would show you that, but what I do is I tailor the minutes to each client. So it typically has a lot of client information in it. The minutes I have in my files are all about, this company's authorizing this, that company's authorizing that. We're agreeing to this or that, right? So it's all got a lot of client information in there. And I could do the process of sitting there and redacting some board minutes so that you guys could see the form that I use, but it's just not really that important because there are so many forms out there. So let's review a form together here. So this one here, you can see it comes. We always like to look at our sources. This one comes from adelphi.edu. This is set up for a nonprofit. Doesn't really matter if it's a nonprofit or a board thing or corporate corporation. I mean, as long as it's a corporate entity, it's still the same core issues are going to come up. So let's take a look at their sample board minutes here. You can see in the corner here they have a spot for the logo. I personally don't feel that strong about that. Most of my board minutes don't have logos on it. They put the board directors meeting date, time, and location up the top. I usually do this a little lower, but I think it's good to have that in your board minutes and meetings to talk about what's happening. And so you understand where it was, what happened. This is great for evidentiary purposes, proves the meeting really happened, etc. Where you put it is not as important, but have that information there is a good thing. We want to really memorialize that the meeting happened, and then who was at the meeting and what happened at the meeting is very important. You can see they put the time that the meeting was called to order. I like to do this as well. So now we know the meeting was called to order. It was started. Those in attendance. Now, the one thing they don't seem to have here, this seems to contemplate a meeting with everybody in person. More and more today, we see a lot of meetings with people tuning in electronically or via telephone. So we may want to have a provision for the following people were in person, following people were attending by telephone. So list the names and then list who was absent. And then there's also a slot here for other present. Sometimes board meetings, you invite guests. Maybe you bring a subject matter expert. Maybe you're going to have the chief financial officer of the company come talk about the financials of the company. Maybe you have your attorney sitting in, for some of the board meetings that my clients have. Sometimes I sit in on those board meetings, so I would list myself as an other present just to build a record of who was there. Very common here to approve an agenda of the meeting. I don't personally use this step as much because we've already drafted a minute. We usually appoint a chair, and the chair runs the meeting. We've looked at the draft minutes. We know what's going to happen or what the major subject areas are going to be. So I don't stick to this as much. This is something that's generally followed. I think it comes from Robert's Rules of Orders. So nothing wrong with having an agenda of the meeting and agreeing to follow that, but you can do it through just having a chair that sets the tone of the meeting. Approval of the minutes. They're approving the prior meeting. So you can see this is a July 8, 2006 meeting, and they're approving the minutes of the June 6 meeting. So it's not uncommon that a lot of times board members, after the last meeting, the minutes go out, usually in email form or similar. People look at the minutes and then you approve them as being a record of the company the next time. You can see they're using nice headings here for each thing that's happening. I do my headings slightly differently. These are nice. This is a little bit cleaner look. I like it. And they're now talking about a CEO report. Usually what will happen is there's going to be discussions, motions, and discussions, right? You don't need to do a transcript here. These are minutes. They're not transcripts. So your focus is on what happened, who called for a vote, what the vote was, whether the motion carried. These are the important things, right? The back and forth doesn't need to be in there. Now, sometimes you'll want to document the board discuss this, but usually it'll be something like to the effect of discussion. You can see here, President Smith recommends this. It doesn't talk about everything everybody says, doesn't talk about all the details that President Smith gave, doesn't even say, it just says the board briefly discussed the options, doesn't tell us everybody's position or what everybody on the board said. It's just summarizing what happened at the meeting. So, motions are happening here. And you can see here, they have a motion, Brown motioned the board for this. It was seconded and passed, dissenting on the record, right? So you're going to be counting your votes throughout to see if you have enough votes. Usually what you have is a quorum. A certain number of people have to attend the meeting in order to have the meeting. So you got to check your bylaws and your corporate code for that. Once you have quorum present, then you usually need a majority of those present to carry. So you got to be watching these vote tallies to see if you have a legally valid action. And really what you're trying, one of the things you want to accomplish with your minutes generally is to document that you cross these legal hurdles, right? So, now they're advising that dissenting votes should only be included if a member requests they go down with have their dissenting vote recorded. That's up to you as a matter of style. I usually record who votes which way. That's a little more detailed than what other people do in most cases. Again, check your corporate code, check your bylaws, but you may not have to put down in your minutes who voted exactly which way. Just did you have a majority? Did you not have a majority? I like to tabulate it and be very specific. Again, now you can see that they're having a treasurer's report at this meeting, discussion. Board moved to second and approve the treasurer's report. No dissent there. Committee reports, other business, right? So this is just chronologically showing what happened in the meetings. Again, what happened, some brief discussion of what happened, not all the back and forth, and then if there was a vote, kind of seeing who motioned and what happened. So you can see how this is going. You can see at the end here, they talked about they talked about future action items. They talked about what time the meeting ended. I do like to do that as well. I like to note that the meeting was closed when it ended. And then you can see here, submitted by the secretary, has the date. I like to actually have the minutes signed by the secretary. So in a lot of cases, I will use a signature block here. I ask the secretary of the corporation to actually affix their signature to it. What that does, particularly in my practice, since I like to use draft board minutes, by having the secretary actually sign them, and then we enter them in the file, we know that it's the final, not the draft. It also then gives us that additional evidentiary hook that the secretary did sign off on it, especially should something happen to the secretary in the future, should they be unavailable or ill or other things. The fact that they actually signed them and put them into the minute book tells us, or the electronic records of the company more practically these days, tells us that there actually was a meeting, it happened, and we have evidence of that through that process, right? So you got to reach that balance in your situation. But you can see the key things here. Meeting happened, who was there, what happened, how did the votes go down, and then some memorialization that these are valid minutes, right? Those are the key things in your board minutes. You can change this format around, but this is a Delphi format. It's a good start, in my opinion. And so it's a good way to look at potentially doing this here. So that's a form. There's many forms out there. You can dig around on the internet, see other forms, draft your own form, or have your lawyer draft their form, which might be different. Again, when I work with my clients, the form's going to look different, but it's going to have a lot of the same key stuff. So you want to pull all those key elements together, get it into your form. Think about how you want to do this process. I mean, certainly, again, don't have to do what I do and draft the minutes in advance. I just like that because it gives me, some semblance of control. I think the directors that I work with like the fact that we know what the meeting might look like, particularly if it's going to be contentious. But again, you're just doing a draft. There could be other discussion points. There could be other agenda items that are not in the draft that need to be added. Some of the things may go out of order. We often have to go back and adjust them again. So we want to pull it together in a way that makes sense for us. This should hopefully be helpful. It should help you think about your board minutes and getting them memorialized. A lot of corporations tend to not have meetings enough. It's partly getting everybody together at the same time, having the discipline to call the meetings. But I think a lot of people are afraid of these board minutes. and there's no reason to be. You can see how simple they can be from today's presentation and comments. Would love your comments and what challenges you're having in your business. Please don't put anything confidential in the YouTube comments, because this is a public forum. We won't have confidentiality, but just general questions about business. Would love to see that. If I see trends and ideas, we'll do a general thing. Again, we can't do legal advice for individual people here on the channel. It's not that kind of show, but if I see business owners are having a particular interest and it's something we can work into the programming schedule, we'd love to cover more topics that are valuable to you. So I do read the comments. I'd love to have some robust discussion going down there and join you there. So comment. If you're enjoying this content, if you're a business owner, business leader, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and give this video a like so more people can see it. All right, guys, I'm Shawn signing off. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Looking forward to reading your comments.